Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, Fox News correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera, trial attorney Rebecca Rose Woodland. I think this, if you look at all the cases where people in our industry, especially Geraldo, have been wrong, and this rush to judgment on high-profile cases. I went through last night the lesson I learned in Atlanta, Richard Jewell, and then Duke Lacrosse, and then so many were wrong. The professors there were wrong, and Ferguson, and Trayvon Martin, and Baltimore, and Freddie Gray, and nobody in the media thought the president would win. We have to balance serious allegations here with also the presumption of innocence, don't we? How do you do that?
Well, I think that, with all due respect, you're burying the lead. The lead is that was a smart, tough, deeply revealing interview. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a he said, she said. So the credibility of the parties is the most relevant thing you can think of. I pictured Judge Roy Moore just then sitting in the witness chair and you asking him those questions and hearing his denials. His non-denial denials, his fumfering and not
what specific question though?
When you asked him, did he date these young women or these girls, and he said, I asked a general question. No, generally not. No, generally not. So that means that there are exceptions to your general rule. I thought, Sean, you ended Roy Moore's, and you did not intend this. But I'm speaking now as I think a fair arbiter with that telling interview, asking every question that everybody listening had. You ended his candidacy, and I would urge Republicans to postpone the special election.
Vladimir Putin arriving at the APEC summit. This is in Vietnam. The president is expected momentarily. When he gets there, we'll bring that to you, Rebecca.
You know, I'm going to continue Geraldo's thoughts. The credibility of the women who came forward. He's claiming this is fake news. Well, if it's fake news, why don't we look at the women? We have 4 women who don't know each other, 4 women who never met each other, one of whom admits to being a long-standing Republican. Where would they come up with this story? They would be pushed then to come up with a story a month before the election. It's really,
but it's happened.
The credibility.
Listen, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
I watched Herman Cain's character get assassinated, and I've known this man a long time. What happened to Clarence Thomas was, he said at the time, a high-tech lynching on the verge of him becoming a Supreme Court justice. All of these, last-minute allegations, do they not have to be suspect? In other words, I'm only saying I want the truth, and I don't know the truth tonight.
I agree, except for the fact that these women didn't come forward. The Washington Post reporter found them after he started investigating.
Well, you believe in the Washington Post. I'm not exactly the biggest fan.
I also think that if Anita Hill had come forward today, and if Clarence Thomas was being confirmed today, he would never be on the high court. These are much different times than the Clarence Thomas confirmation.
I think Clarence Thomas was his own best witness and gave one of the most powerful defenses of an individual. Let me bring Greg in. I'm not trying to. We have plenty of time tonight. Greg.
Look, cross-examination is the engine of truth, and your interview today was a fine cross-examination of Roy Moore. I think you missed your calling. You should have been a lawyer. I found his answers to be unconvincing and implausible, his entire story to be, in a word, unbelievable, which means he's lying. He's not telling the truth, and on that basis, I think he should step aside. Look, you caught him in a glaring contradiction. You asked him, as a 32-year-old man, did you date 17 and 18-year-olds? He said, quote, if I did, I'm not going to dispute anything. Later, when you asked him a second time, he said, if I did, I don't remember. You asked him a third time, and he said, absolutely not. Now, that is, at best, an inconsistency, at worst, a contradiction. And jurors are told there's a standard jury instruction. The judge reads it to them. If you find that a witness is lying in one part of their story, you may conclude the witness is lying about everything. And that's how I felt about Judge Roy Moore today. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. because of the source of this information, the Washington Post, which endorsed his opponent,
can I ask you
and
all
because
a
of
quick
the
exit
age
question.
of these. Pardon
what
me?
if he, in the interview, as I was asking him, I know it was, listen, it was not as hard as people think. I went through all the facts of the case and gave him a chance to answer. I wanted to be fair. To also, what if, in fact, he was just inarticulate and it still wasn't true? Throwing it out, devil's advocate.
If he was inarticulate, what wasn't true? The four
in other words, that 38
women?
years ago, when he was 32 years old, he was not a predator.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a serious charge, and you see, no one can say here definitively. And I'm watching the media in the court of public opinion. They've already convicted him. He's out, but they did that yesterday. Before this interview took place.
Right, I agree that these are allegations, but when you put it together, Sean, four women who don't know each other, a 14-year-old girl, these women are going to destroy their lives then? All
right, we got to take a break. We'll have more on my exclusive interview with Judge Roy Moore coming up. Plus, we are awaiting, as you can see on the side of your screen here, President Trump will be arriving at the APEC summit that is in Vietnam with other world leaders. Busy breaking news night tonight on Hannity. This is a Fox News alert moments ago. President Trump arriving at the APEC summit. This is in Vietnam. Also tonight, we just showed you my exclusive interview with Judge Roy Moore, who was accused of sexual misconduct. And we have been telling you, the media has been quick to convict Judge Moore before ever even hearing this interview or his side of the story. We continue, by the way. Watch this first. Well, no, hang on. We'll go to Greg Jarrett, who's with us. Also, Geraldo Rivera. Rebecca Rose Woodland is with us. I want to go back again, because I think we all have an obligation to get things right when there's serious charges. Again, there's the president of the APEC summit. Richard Jewell, when I was in Atlanta, everybody had this guy. He fit the profile of the lone bomber. Why? Because he lived with his mother. You look at the case, the Duke lacrosse case, 88 professors take out a full-page advertisement in the school newspaper. Ferguson, there are people that still believe the lie, hands up, don't shoot. That never happened. Trayvon Martin, look at what the president, I could have been Trayvon. You know, it could have been my son. That turned out, when the evidence was presented before a jury and an eyewitness that placed Trayvon on top of George Zimmerman, grounding and pounding his head into cement. I'm just giving you examples. Or the Freddie Gray case. Everybody was convinced those policemen were going to jail. Everyone. Then you have a media that got it so wrong on Trump, it was contempt that they were showing every night. Donald Trump running, and he wins the presidency. They were wrong there. A lot of people wouldn't vet Obama. They were wrong there. For me, in my own personal life, what I learned from these experiences is that a rush to judgment is very, very dangerous. And that's why I sincerely urge caution among everybody. You got a bigger piece of the puzzle because this was his first interview and only interview. Does that give you pause? Should we all pause and wait for more information?
I think we can pause and wait for more information.
But you made up your mind.
But I do think
But you made up your mind. I could tell.
Well, because I heard the interview. Why doesn't he come on? Why don't we invite him
Well, he was on today. I mean, in fairness.
That's true. That he was on. He was on your radio show, but something didn't seem genuine. Something didn't seem real to me. Not to me. And when I look at four women, it's very hard for me to believe four independent women.
Is it four women? There was a hesitation. No doubt about it, and Greg was right. Greg, by the way, has a photographic memory. I don't. And Greg Geraldo went back, and he said this is how he answered the question about the appropriateness of a 17-year-old girl. But it doesn't. Would that convict you? And
see, to me, I go back. I'm just.
I know you don't like
this to be a little bit. I want this to be a little bit about you and me. We come from different parts of the political spectrum. You believed Bill Clinton guilty about all those charges. I believed him innocent. You believed Donald Trump innocent, and many, many people believed him guilty after the Access Hollywood tapes. We have a tendency to want, particularly in this charged political environment, to believe the people who think like we do philosophically and politically, and to disbelieve our political opponents. What was brilliant about this interview was that you and Roy Moore largely, I mean, admit it, you largely agree on the great philosophical issues of the day. He's a little more to the right of you, but generally speaking, you're in the same milieu. Yet you asked him in explicit detail about this charge and this charge and this charge, and then you said, as the parent of a daughter, I find this conduct disgusting. Just like everybody watching tonight finds that conduct disgusting. That was so riveting and so powerful in the impact it had on Judge Roy Moore that I really do believe that today you ended his effective political career.
But even he, I got to be fair to Greg, but even he, Greg, when asked if anyone at 32 had done this, was a predator to a 14-year-old girl, right, would that disqualify them to be a senator? He said yes.
He did, and there are other reasons he should disqualify himself. And I'm not rushing to judgment on Roy Moore. I've followed his career closely for years. I have long said that this is a man who has a record of lawlessness. He pretends to respect the law, but he has nothing but contempt for it. How do we know? Because he has repeatedly defied federal court orders and rulings on U.S. constitutional matters. He even rejected the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage and sought to undermine it with his own orders. He is not above the 9 justices sitting on the U.S. Supreme Court, though he seems to think so. And on that basis, I have said before the primary, it would be trouble to nominate this man because he is toxic, and he will be so in the U.S. Senate.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll show you the media's rush to judgment way before this interview even. And is that a problem? We'll ask that question. Then we have John Bolton, Sebastian Gorka. As you can see, the president is in Vietnam at the APEC summit. We'll cover that, continue to cover that live. The president speaks. We'll bring that to you. Welcome back to Hannity. This is a Fox News alert. President Trump is in Vietnam at this hour at the APEC summit. Also tonight, more reaction to my exclusive interview with Judge Roy Moore, who's been accused of sexual misconduct. Now, we've got a problem in this country, and that's the media. So many quick to attack, convict, rush to judgment. That's even before this interview with Judge Moore. Well, let's watch this.
Some of these right-wing media defenders, I don't know how they can possibly sleep at night. And I wonder if they're going to look back years from now and regret some of the things they're saying. These commentators, the Steve Bannons, the Sean Hannitys, they'd rather talk about the media than the alleged molestation. That's a much more convenient topic for them, but I think everybody sees through it.
You saw on Fox News, he had a lot of defenders. So this is going to test two things. One, sort of the depths and depravity of conservative media outlets that defend someone like Roy Moore, who is now known to be a pedophile.
If you know a 14-year-old, picture that, and now visually picture this 32-year-old slime bag attorney actually calling up to her and bring her, just play that movie out in your head.
A woman says Roy Moore initiated a sexual encounter with her when she was 14 and he was 32. For those keeping track, that is an age difference of, it doesn't matter, she was 14.
All right, as we continue with Greg Jarrett, Geraldo Rivera, Rebecca Rose Woodland is with us. All right, let me go back to Greg first, and we'll start with that. There have been so many instances that the media is wrong. You know, I asked those people in the media, and I can play tapes of them on Duke Lacrosse. I can play tapes of them believing hands up, don't shoot. I can play tapes of them, you know, convicting George Zimmerman before he had a trial. We can go back and again. And my question is, how do you sleep at night if you just recklessly go out there and don't know the truth and haven't heard every side and you turn out to be wrong? You know, there's 10 commandments, Greg. The other 9 we know that are broken on a daily basis by human beings. I assume the one about false witness is also broken a lot. I'm not saying in this case, but I'm saying we've got to be careful.
Look, the media narrative is that Donald Trump is the villain, Hillary Clinton is an innocent victim, and Robert Mueller, the special counsel, is a hero. And they stick to that narrative each and every day. I was watching another network the other day, a competing network, and, you know, the anchor was saying, isn't this meeting with Russia collusion, as if it's illegal? These anchors and reporters actually never bother to look up the law. There is no such thing as collusion as a crime except in antitrust law. but they imply that having a conversation with a Russian is somehow a crime. It is not.
Yeah.
Paying a Russian for information in a dossier, that would be a crime under the Federal Election Campaign Act.
Let me talk with you, Geraldo, about selective moral outrage. You were one of Bill Clinton's, probably the strongest voice at the time defending him during impeachment.
That's why you hated me.
No, I didn't hate you. I did not.
You had a bullseye in your office. This is the literal fact.
That's not true.
With my face on it, that he threw darts.
We were competing at the same hour at the time. Believe me, I remember.
It was the bullseye.
All right. But I spent time. I interviewed Paula Jones. I interviewed Kathleen Willey. I had one of 2 interviews at the time with Juanita Broderick. And then let's look at this, because the Democratic Party, and I want to talk about this double standard, they excused all that behavior. They talked about dragging dollars through trailer parks about some of these women, and they started a smear, campaign against Monica Lewinsky at the time, Clinton surrogates, and then Hillary Clinton, she took money from countries that abuse women, kill gays and lesbians, and persecute Christians and Jews. So I watch Democrats, okay, they could be all outraged now, and they can believe everything they want to believe, but this isn't out of principle. This is out of politics. This is out of their hope that the Republicans implode and that they could steal the Alabama Senate seat. This is opportunity for them, because the Democratic Party has a reckoning that they're going to have to go through, because he went with a 22-year-old girl and he's the president of the United States.
In the Oval Office.
In the Oval Office.
I think that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's why I believe there has to be some standards. Now, I've heard commentator after commentator today all day long on ours and other networks, particularly on the other networks, suggesting that the senators who are saying that this man cannot be a viable candidate if these charges are true. Everybody kept putting the caveat, the little tail. He can't, if these charges are true. He can't ever be there if these charges are true. So how do you know if these charges are true, particularly if you have a case that's old like this? So that's why I want to go back to what I said last night. You need some kind of standards. The charge should be reasonably contemporaneous. Now, I'm not saying there should be a rigid statute of limitations, but it should be like a decade, 2 decades. I mean, the reason there's a statute of limitations is that people's memories fade. They become unreliable.
Can I ask you a tough question?
But you need some kind of corroboration. Yeah. You need some kind. In this case, the corroboration exists. What is the contemporaneous corroboration? This 14-year-old girl, purportedly, according to the Washington Post, told 2 of her girlfriends what happened.
Here's the tough question.
In real time.
Do you think Bill Clinton, in retrospect, was a predator?
That is a very tough question. And I still have affection for him.
You suspect he might. Let me help you out. You suspect he might be.
I suspect that many of these charges are true. I suspect they're true. And I think that he was definitely a philanderer.
And a predator?
Predation is different. Predation has to do with how the victim or the other person is.
Quick, last 20 seconds, Rebecca.
Look, Sean, I've been on your show. We handled Duke great. We've handled Trayvon
By the way,
Martin.
we were right on Duke.
We were right. We were right from the beginning.
Duke.
My instinct was...
Same was mine.
Right. I was on every night with you. In this, I have to tell you, my instinct is
the other way.
These girls, I don't think they're lying.
Does he deserve the presumption of innocence?
Of course he does. And I don't denounce that. But I do think that these girls do not have a reason. They don't have a reason to lie.
Is it problematic when you wait 38 years? And by the way, I can understand people not wanting to for reasons that they're embarrassed or
of course,
they've been traumatized, and it's horrible.
14.
If you talk about
how embarrassing for her at 14. I don't know that she'd be so comfortable coming out at any time until she was
I want to see what else comes out in the days ahead. I will keep an open mind, and I don't believe in rushing to judgment. I think it's very dangerous.
Do you believe the election should be postponed?
I don't know how they can do that legally yet, but they're talking about it. But I think it's for the fairness of the people of Alabama. I think till we get to the facts and the truth and sort through all this, it probably would be a good idea. I believe
the alternative is the Democrat will win.
All right, when we come back, thank you all. Appreciate it.